Hi, and welcome to the LinkedIn Live broadcast on the release of the ISM Report on Business. My name is Dan Zeiger. I'm a senior writer and copy editor for Inside Supply Management, which is Institute for Supply Management's member publication. Hope your 4th of July week is off to a good start, and happy Bobby Bonilla Day to all who celebrate. And we're happy that you've taken time to join us as we discuss the manufacturing PMI data for June. The numbers revealed continuing weak demand, employment cuts and higher prices, and sentiment and panelist comments were a whopping 11-to-1 ratio of negative to positive. So one could say it's a minor miracle that the composite index reading actually increased a tad to 49%. That's half a percentage point increase compared to May. And I'll give you one guess, just one, on the issue or the word that dominated comments. So while you mull over that brain teaser, lucky for us, I know just who to ask to help us sort through this menagerie that was the June data and what it says about the manufacturing economy. Her name is Susan Spence. She's the chair of the ISM Manufacturing Business Survey Committee. Sue, I usually ask, what first stood out among the June data and the comments, but I don't think the sentiment on tariffs, that was the word, by the way, could be more pronounced than last month, but it was. I'll cite a particular comment from a respondent in machinery. He or she said, the tariff mess has utterly stopped sales globally and domestically. Everyone is on pause. Orders have collapsed. So discuss the mess, as this commenter put it, and just what else stood out to you about the numbers and the comments in June.
Sure thing, Dan. Thanks. Appreciate being here this month. The comments are always interesting. I'm finding people are getting more severe with their language, and I don't mean that maybe in the way people think about, but just literally almost a desperation. Next week is the supposed end of the 90-day pause, I think July 9th. We've said a few months in a row here, until there's more certainty with what will happen with tariffs, there's not going to be certainty in the business world. So yeah, a half a point is, surprising, I guess I would say. The production number being up 4.9, I loved seeing it. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me, given the fact that new orders are contracting faster, backlog is contracting faster, employment is contracting faster. That last thing being, companies continuing to look at their cost structure relative to those other factors. But we are still in contraction at 49. It is above 42, which anything above 42 long-term we consider expansion. So I think we're still in the same position. Folks are waiting to see what will happen with the policy of the administration, the economic policy, and they aren't making moves to replace workers that have left. The hire to force manage ratio is worse than last month. And then, as you mentioned, the sentiment, every positive comment, we got 11 negative comments overall for the economy. So same position as last month. We need certainty in order for folks to start an upward trend and continue it.
Yeah, I agree with you on the comments. I've been following the PMI for close to 8 years now that I've been to ISM. And yeah, Sue is absolutely right. We don't have potty mouths or potty keyboards to, among our commenters. But yeah, the comments have been as overt as I can remember, especially regarding tariffs. Hey, last month we discussed that we were talking about inventories a little bit and production, and you had discussed and gone into, the combination that we were seeing in the data of backlogs, imports, inventories, just a bad recipe for future production. And, there was some positive movement in some of those indexes in June, but they all remain in contraction. But as you just cited, the production index returned to expansion. Just to elucidate a little bit more on that, what do you think happened?
I'm scratching my head a bit. Production has certainly sped up, it seems, despite having fewer employees. If you look at the hire to force manage ratio, despite having less orders, both new orders, new export orders took a 6.2% leap. Imports took a 7.5% leap. On the imports, I really do believe that when that 90-day tariff window pause was announced, folks scrambled to get their goods back on the container ships and back into port, because next week it could all be over again, right? The relief could be over. So, new export orders, if you look at customer inventories, and we've been in the too low territory for a while, the too low has slowed down. So the translation there is perhaps the customers are finally at such a low number of inventory that they've had no choice but to reorder. Perhaps that's why we're seeing some new export orders, contraction slow. But the production, isn't going to continue to get much, much better every month if there's no order book, right? The backlog's going to burn off, the new order pipeline's going to dry up. And by the way, if you can't hire replacement workers, or if you can't hire in general, who will work on these products, right? So that's kind of the general things that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue to the next question that I had here. It was unemployment specifically, and it, judging by the index readings, it looks like it's getting worse before it gets better. The reading for June was 45%. That was 1.8 percentage points lower than the previous month. And we were talking about ratio of comments earlier. Those were just in general, that 11-to-1. The ratio of employment-specific comments in terms of hiring versus staff reductions was 1 to 3.2 in favor of staff reductions. And that's as wide of a ratio on that index, on that dynamic as I can remember. Is this just the way it's going to be until demand picks up, or
I believe it's going to be the way I think it is the way it's going to be until two things happen. Decisions are made on who's getting tariff from what country, and as important as that is, that the business world believes it's not going to change again. And that second one is the uncertainty, volatility, because just because there is an announcement doesn't mean that things won't change the next week. So if you're an employer and you have a decision to make to hire replacement folks for folks that have retired or quit or cut your staff, and you're not seeing the new orders from your customers expand, and you're seeing announcements of tariffs, and then never mind, well, we're going to wait 90 days and maybe we will, we won't. You're not going to do things, because you could make decisions in order to be prepared for something you think is going to happen. But, unlike years past, we say something, it seems to change overnight. These are not, these are the words I'm reading from the panelist comment. And so decision-making gets frozen, just like last month it gets frozen. The other thing I wanted to mention, when you look at the overall percent of the manufacturing GDP and contraction, while the contraction number overall was down a bit, it was 46% of manufacturing GDP and contraction versus 57. What really jumped out at me was the severe contraction PMIs of 45 or less went from 5% to 25%. And two of the biggest contributions to GDP, chemical products and transport. Chemical products is in strong contraction at 43.5. Chemicals go into virtually everything in our lives, right? 20.12% of manufacturing GDP is made up by that industry. Transport is 47.3 PMI, and that's another big one. I think that one is 16% GDP. So, if you think about the bellwethers, the leading indicators, chemicals and raw materials for a lot of other products, transportation. I worked for FedEx for a number of years. We see it first, right? This is transportation equipment, but another leading indicator. So those industries being thrown into strong contraction, or at least the chemical products, is really worrisome to me. I don't think it's too late for a turnaround, but I think once again, the tariff schedules get set, and then second, people believe they're not going to change again, it's then going to be some months later before we start to see it. But we can hopefully see trends, and with certainty comes improvement. Yeah.
Well, I had a question on that. But yeah, let's camp on that for a little bit. We've been ISM in the manufacturing report has been calculating and highlighting that stat for a while, because we consider it a good indicator of overall weakness or strength, whatever it may be in the manufacturing sector. the share of manufacturing GDP that is in contraction or in strong contraction, which is the subject of this question. You cited a quarter of the manufacturing GDP is in strong contraction. That's defined as an industry specific PMI of 45% of lower. And as you said, that figure is up from 5% in May. Just talk a little bit more about, why you've been keeping such a close eye on this stat since you've become the chair, and, how high would that percentage have to go before you really start to get concerned?
Well, how much further would it have to fall? I guess, if you look at chemical products, I mean, we track it for several years. I look at every one of the sub indexes for chemical products, right? So the PMI is at 43.5. Every single index is down: new orders, production, employment, backlog, new export orders. Prices went from 68, sub-index is 72.2. That's about as high as you see. And then imports down. So given that particular industry is 20.12% of manufacturing GDP and goes into so many products, that's why it's such a high percentage. Those are disturbing trends. I mean, employment was at 47.3 in May. For chemical products, it's down to 39. Yeah. So that's driving the manufacturing economy, or it's the biggest contributor. So I would say, I want to pay attention to that. There's 6 out of the 18 that we closely watch, right? We watch them all, but 6. That one in particular, when I saw the uptick in the manufacturing PMI and I see it was driven by production, I kind of went to that one and some of the other big ones. And it was like, okay. So apparel and, leather products, wood products, those could take big swings up, but that's not going to swing the percent because it might be 2% of GDP.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I used to talk about chemical products a lot with your predecessor, Tim Fiore. He explained it as the chemical products is the one manufacturing industry that provides products for each one of the 17 others. Yeah. So yeah, it's as much of a bellwether of an industry as you can get. So yeah, we will keep close watch on that in the coming months. Another obviously an index that is going to be impacted by the current environment regarding trade is prices. And the last 3 months, as the report noted, the index has been at the levels as high as it's been since 2022. Yeah. And I would expect that relief is likely not coming until this current environment gets sorted out. And one of the things, I'll make it a 2-part question. Comment specifically on the prices situation. Yeah. And you commented a couple of times in the report about how buyers and sellers are kind of haggling in the negotiation over which party pays the tariffs. But the second part of that question, I mean, you've been in those rooms, you've been in those negotiations. Yeah. What's that experience, like for those parties from your experience?
Well, I guess it depends if you're, if you're the type of person that really loves a good fight. But I was asked last month, well, if you have good contracts with solid pricing, that's locked in, it won't hurt you. Well, until your supplier says they have to walk away from your business, and we certainly saw that at FedEx with some suppliers during the pandemic because they literally couldn't pay the bills. When the input prices go up that much, and for prices on what we watch, it's 9 months in a row, we're up to 69.7 overall. You do the best you can to negotiate, even if you have a contract. It's really, really helpful to have solid relations that are respectful with your suppliers, because not that they'll absorb all the costs, but they're going to be more willing to work with you if you're a customer that's beneficial. But the inputs going up that much for that long, right? 1 of 2 things is going to happen. Either you're going to absorb it as a customer, or you're going to pass it on, right? And you could also argue, well, hold on, some of these tariffs were paused. They're not here yet. Sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes you'll see folks raising prices because they can, right? And I'm not saying it's predatory or those sort of things, but sometimes in an environment of prices going up, or threatening to go up. Sometimes it's preemptive. It's going to happen. I never see them come back down, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
We like to think they will, but I think there's a theory that once customers are used to paying for something, they'll continue to pay for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not good. It would be different if orders were flowing in and backlog was higher, but that's not the case right now. So where does it come from? If you're having bigger prices on inputs and raw material, you're going to watch the other cost factors like employment and do whatever you can to just hang on and not incur additional costs, right? Until you see more orders flowing. So that's how my simple mind works is orders are flowing, pipeline inside the company gets bigger. You can now afford to hire those people and maybe absorb a little bit of that increase.
Yeah. And as regards to the index itself, the prices index 69.7% in June. That was up 0.3 of a percentage point from May. Just looking at the commodities up in price on that list, I mean, you see the usual suspects, the usual drivers, aluminum for a 19th straight month. Steel is there, 5th straight month. Stainless steel, steel products, electronic and electrical components have been there. Just what are you seeing as you look at that arena?
It tracks with some of the comments as well. Very few of the panelists will say, well, we went ahead and passed it along. A number of them will say, we're doing our best to try to, keep them at bay. But, at some point, we need the product we're going to have to absorb. So, the list is some of the same. There's some things that are new on there as well. Once we have tariff certainty, right, whether that means we're not going to tariff a country or we're going to pick a number and stick with the number, the prices are going to adjust, but we're arguing some of them already have. Again, that's okay if the country's in great shape and the economy's in wonderful shape and everybody's working and you can afford to pay a little more, but, while the economy is continuing to, again, over 42, we're in expansion. It's very, very worrisome to see the pipeline shut off of new orders. So the other thing I thought about is, you rarely have a single issue driving things, but this is about as single as, kind of like the pandemic. Listen, if we can just get people healthy and protected and back to work, we're going to be able to handle the rest of what's going on. If we can just get tariffs settled and not changing and lack of volatility, we'll be able to make the business decisions we need to thrive and grow and continue toward expansion, real expansion, right?
Yeah. Well, you would discuss these a little bit earlier, but I think we should talk about them a little more. The new export orders and imports indexes last month in May were at, when you have two indexes that are at the lows they haven't been since, well, I don't want to, we have to account for COVID here, but lows that they haven't been since the Great Recession. That's newsworthy stuff, and we should camp out there a little bit more. But they kind of recovered a little bit in June. New export orders went up to 46.3. That was up from 40.1. Imports, which was probably a big sigh of relief at 47.4, up from 39.9. But as you mentioned earlier, companies maybe trying to take advantage of the tariff pause might have had a little bit to do with that. But just talk about those two indexes and, kind of expand on, some of the things that, and was it a sigh of relief, to see those indexes tick back up a little bit or a lot?
For sure. It was for me, when I saw imports drop last month from the month prior, 7.2, it kind of took my breath away, but it didn't make me wonder what was going on. It made perfect sense because people had pulled forward material month prior to try to get things in ahead of the original tariffs hitting. And so of course it's going to be lower, right? The coming back made sense as I read comments about, okay, we have 90 days with regard to China to try to go get everything. Now we'll see shipping rates go up and ports congested again. So that made sense. New export, I'm going to assume it might have to do with customer inventory overall being so low for so long that 9 months actually, that customers, including, customers that we consider an export customer, are finally having to buy what they're going to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. I mean, I like to look at at least 3 months for a trend. We'll see. It's good to be able to hear and see what's going on in the news and see an impact so quickly. Manufacturing sees it very quickly. I think sometimes it's confusing because folks see other things going on and say, we're fine, we're not seeing it yet. But hold on, think about manufacturing 6 to 7 months ahead of everyone else. Pay attention, because how this industry goes, so goes the rest of it. It's going to have a ripple effect.
Yeah. And you had discussed new export orders in the context of, or tying it at least to the customer inventories index. And we've talked the last couple of months, that was kind of the one ray of sunshine maybe in the report, that it was at that too low level that would suggest at some point customers are going to have to start reordering. Yeah. Maybe we saw some life in that. In June, the index was up 2.2 points to 46.7, up from 44.5. Just talk about what you saw there.
Yeah, I'm assuming that could be it. And so that was kind of nice to see as well. It would be nice if you could see a straight line from that to production, but that's probably a bit of a stretch. So, as customers who have been holding back because, again, they're impacted by tariffs as well, especially export customers, the loosening up of that, I'm going to say, is probably due to they just can't stand how low it is versus they saw some big change in the policy, because we have not. I'll be paying a lot of attention next week, July 9th, to see what's happening. And there's a lot going on in the U.S. right now. There's the bill is there. The European Central Bank is meeting as we speak. It's all very interesting to see now what is going to happen, what decisions going to be made. It's really it could change the lever for what's going on in manufacturing. If there continues to be wait and see or wait and delay as a negotiating tactic, we're going to have the same chaos, unfortunately, and running around in a circle for a long time. Nobody likes that.
Yeah. Well, indicative of that, I think I had mentioned something of this dynamic last month when we were talking with Steve Miller together. I mean, we're 23, 24 minutes into this broadcast now, and this is the first time we're going to mention some of the hostilities that are erupting in the Middle East with the conflict between Israel and Iran, and obviously significant supply chain implications there. There's a significant thoroughfare for oil and other shipping. Just the geopolitical turmoil that has erupted in the last couple of weeks. There were a couple of comments on that in the report, but the supplier deliveries index indicated slightly better delivery performance in June. It went down to 54.2. Remember, students of the data that index is inversed. 54.2 went down from 56.1 in May. So just talk about just that dynamic and what could potentially, is it just too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell. So, in normal times, a slower supplier delivery, right, would mean that these companies are flush with work, and that's a good thing, right? The slowdown has slowed, right? So I'm not sure I yet have an opinion on what that means, right? When ports were congested because people were trying to get their goods in ahead of these tariffs hitting, it made sense that things slowed down. But that may have impacted the PMI in a way we were not used to, right? It didn't mean that was good for business in that case. So we'll see. I'm gonna wait and hold the opinion on that one in particular. Interestingly enough, and even before the recent Middle East unrest, petroleum and coal products, they're expanding. They're the big six that are expanding. They're the only one. They're up to a 60, right? And so, okay, good for them, but is that good for, everybody else, right? We need more than just that one industry, of course, pulling in the right direction for them. So we will see. Geopolitical unrest, is risky and drives markets, of course. And we want to see peace and prosperity and decisions that can be stuck with. So the economy can grow and thrive.
Yeah. Well, hey, Sue, yeah, those are all the questions that I had in specific to this month's report. I mean, is there anything that I haven't asked or that, that we haven't discussed that you think might be important to share before we wrap up?
I think we're good. I would love to people to, look to the data that we provide, other data that's out there when they're thinking about what's happening. Sometimes what you say is happening is, what do they call that? Revisionist history, or you know what? I'll check with data. I was watching Christine Lagarde this morning on the European Central Bank Forum that's going on right now, and I believe it's Portugal. And she said, we act with data. The data will tell us. She must have said it a million times. So I repeat that. That's what's going on, and we can say whatever we want, but policies are policies, and hopefully there are going to be some reasonableness to settling things so that we can get on with it. These purchasing managers know what to do, except in the time when they aren't sure what the government is going to do and what the policies are going to be. So that needs to be settled down. I was asked in my last interview, what would I advise if I could, Chairman Powell? What would I tell them? And I said, they're not the ones I'd be talking to. What I would do is to, look at the data and share that, these purchasing managers represent 18 industries, huge swath of the GDP, and they're telling you what they need. And what they need is stability, less volatility, and certainty that decisions will be made and stuck to, and that they're in the best interest of everybody, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, talking about data and what it tells us, I'll keep reiterating it, but, become a student of the ISM report on business data. And how it all fits together. It's really fun, and we'll keep talking about it in the coming months. Thanks a lot, Susan.
Thank you,
I appreciate
Dan.
your time. Yeah. Hey, thanks to you for joining us today. And for more information, feel free to go to ismworld.org, where you can read our roundup article that discusses a lot of what Sue and I have talked about here. And if you want to be a part of the ISM Manufacturing Services or Hospital Business Survey panels that help compile data for the report on business, visit ismworld.org/join the panel for more information. Join us on Thursday, 4th of July Eve, as we break down the Services PMI data with Steve Miller. He's the chair of ISM Services Business Survey Committee. And for Sue Spence and the people who helped us behind the scenes, they are Christina Cahill and Jennifer Stevens. My name is Dan Zeiger, and we'll see you next time.